Hi, and welcome back to the Faxon blog and podcast. Today, we are joined by Eric and John from pewpewtactical, and it's a special one. This is episode number 10 for us. We haven't been at this very long, but we've been having a lot of fun doing it. We're super excited that they are with us today. With me is our Director of Marketing, Curt Dustin. But Eric, John, would you please just introduce yourselves and what you do at pewpew?
Okay, I guess I'll go first. I'm Eric Hung. I'm the founder of pewpewtactical, which started off basically just as a personal gun blog back in around 2016 when I first got into guns, and all my friends were asking me the same questions over and over. So I felt, okay, I'll just write a blog and at least 10 people will read it. And now we've come a long way. We get millions of visitors each month, and we just have a really good time playing with the newest guns out there, getting everything hands-on and testing it and letting our audience know.
Excellent. John?
Hey, I'm John. I handle social media over at pewpew. I am their pretty YouTube boy.
Every brand needs a pretty face.
True. It's very true. And I'm at least like a 6 or 7 out of 10. So yeah, that's pretty much my end. I am a professional meme peddler. So if you're at all active on our Facebook page, all of the shit posting is generally me. But outside of that, like I said, I do all of the video content. And a lot of the times, depending on what it is, we all kind of have like our own specializations, but I do a lot of the hands-on testing and all of the script writing for our videos and such as well.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Well, guys, one of the main things that we wanted to touch on today is just kind of the difference in gun laws between where we are and where you are. And with the pandemic, we've been mentioning for several weeks about this gun run and how places have been out of stock and how a lot of first-time gun buyers, especially people who, may have been against gun ownership in the past are now like, oh my God, I need one. And then they realize that there's a lot more chutes and ladders that go to buying a gun legally than what has been portrayed to them over the years in the media. A lot of people, we still get Facebook and Instagram messages asking about like door delivery. So it's like, no, like that's not how it works. So I'd love to just kind of talk about that. And where are you guys based out of specifically? Like, where do you guys live in California?
Yeah, so we're based out of LA, and there have been tons and tons of stories now of friends like coming out of the woodwork and asking us how to get guns. And I'm sure I'll let John go through it because he's had a lot more experience dealing with that.
It's been interesting. I think there's a little bit of an inclination to kind of want to like rub it in, like, oh yeah, no, you guys get it now, right? But I think for at least on my part, I've managed to avoid those inclinations a little bit. But yeah, definitely. I think the vast majority of people who may not have been a part of this community before, but are now actively like interested in jumping in, now understand that it's like, oh, a lot of this is kind of draconian and maybe a little bit silly. So hopefully it's a teachable moment.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we were talking to Dan Zimmerman from The Truth About Guns a few weeks ago, and he had been interviewing several gun stores kind of throughout the country, and just, I mean, you probably repeddled the meme too of like the Becky at the gun counter, being upset that she couldn't get her gun that day. How does that play into what you see in California versus kind of like what we see in the Midwest? I mean, how has the gun control conversation kind of changed, even just in these last few months?
I think a lot of people just like even anti-gun friends or people just didn't care about guns, but they want some sort of protection right now. They're finding out that, okay, there is some gun control and I voted it in and this is now what happens. So just like anecdotally, we found that the gun stores around us, around LA, When it reached peak panic, maybe a few weeks ago, we were hearing stories of 5-hour waits. And so it's 5-hour waits to get in there. And then you have to take your safety certificate test or whatever they call it now. And then you have to fill out all your DROS forms, pay, and then you get to wait 10 days to go there and wait 5 more hours. And so it's just been a mess. There's no ammo, there's no mags. People are finding out. And I think the scariest, at least for me, is, okay, now you have all these gun owners that have their guns and now the ranges are closed. So they have no way to actually test out their guns. And that's just, I don't know, at that point, it's a little scary.
Now, Curt, you had a story of just a few weeks ago of you picking one up and hearing people at the range, because this was right before the ranges closed down. You want to just give your little anecdote on what?
Yeah, it was literally the day before, and they opened them back up, but it was, again, it was things were in flux, and so they were, Ohio came down and said, okay, well, we're gonna have to close the range down, but the store. The store can still stay open. And so people were coming in, and there was a group of about 8 people who came in, and they actually, the gun shop, they did it right. They had folks like right at the front door being like, hey, have you purchased a gun before? What can I help you with? Just to kind of guide people, because there were so many people there, and they're like, yeah, we want to go shoot. And they're like, okay, have you ever shot before? Nope. So I just kind of see them look, and they like get on the little radio. They're like, we need 2 ROs with these, which is good. But again, I mean, that's a rough time to decide, hey, I'm going to jump into this. And so I think it is. I think you're right. That there is a great opportunity, and a number of new people are kind of coming into the fold. But you're right. There's a bunch of people who purchase guns who they haven't done any training. They haven't really even shot them much. So again, I think that it is. I think that we all have that right. And it's very important that we have the right and the ability to protect ourselves. But, I'm hoping that as things kind of open back up, that as the firearms community, that we really take the opportunity to say, hey, okay, now that we can all take a bit of a breather, let's bring this back in, and let's like show you guys, hey, here's the right way to do this. Here's the safe way to do this. Here are the things you need to think about,
Yeah, for us, like we cater a lot to the beginners. So we see a lot of traffic for people coming in for all those beginner articles. And like we have a video course too that's doing phenomenally well. So there are like tons of people trying to get that right information out there. Yeah, and sort of like we started the blog because at least when I started maybe 10 years ago, just looking up on forums, looking up on other blogs, it just felt like it wasn't very beginner friendly. So that's like the number one thing we like aim for, like just to be really helpful for everyone.
Yeah, because there's a lot. I mean, and really, it's not just in the firearms industry. It just kind of has a different level of oomph to it, where you have kind of the insiders and the lifelong, shooters and gun owners, that we get set in our ways and things, and it kind of becomes territorial. And we're like, oh, you're stupid if you don't get this and whatever, you don't do that. And not even leaving room for tastes and preferences, outside of that stuff. But guys, you were kind enough to give me some bullet points, because obviously I don't live in California. I don't necessarily know everything that goes into the gun laws there. This year was my first year at SHOT Show. So seeing all these people from Cali come up and be like, oh, we'd love to have that, but, and going over things, it was very eye-opening for me. And since you guys do have some of the more, stricter gun laws, I'd like to walk through kind of some of that. And then hopefully, we could, let our audience understand and let folks as a whole understand, like, hey, this really gets down to a microcosm type level of gun control. And it's not different from state to state. And it's definitely not different for a lot of people from city to city. So there's a lot to take in there. The first thing I want to ask about is the idea of the handgun roster. Can you give me like just a book jacket blurb version of what that is and how it works?
Yeah, like disclaimer, I'm obviously not a lawyer, so look up all your stuff, look up your local state laws.
Disclaimer, none of us lawyers.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, the handgun roster was started, I think, sometime in the 2000s, and it basically dictated what was quote unquote safe for consumers in California. So it listed out like the manufacturers, the models, even down to the specific like aesthetics. Like if you have different color grips, different color, just like Cerakote, it's going to be a different kind of gun. And with that, it kind of put a lot of burden on manufacturers because they had to submit a couple handguns to get onto the roster. And so that effectively shut off anything new for at least I think the last 10 years or so. So if anything is new, if you see it at SHOT Show, you're not going to be able to get it in California. But there's also the weird workaround where normal civilians can't get things off the roster, but law enforcement can. And so that spawned this weird sort of secondary market on CalGuns, one of the most popular California gun forums, where you can see just regular guns like you would probably take for granted, like a VP9 or anything. It's not new. It's not super awesome, but it's going to fetch 50% to 200% markup just because you can't really get it here. And so there's been a lot of crazy stories about police officers just buying tons of them, immediately selling them, and then getting popped for that. So basically, if you want something, your highest generation stuff you're going to get is a Glock 3rd gen. And I think that's why Glock still produces them, just to service the California market.
And you put a tag note in here for me that just says mag locked things. Can you explain that and kind of what maybe some of the protocols
so that one's more rifles. I had one more crazy talking point about the roster. So they have to have obviously there has to be some way to get on the roster.
Sure.
New guns. So it's a little bit easier for revolvers. But let's say you want a new striker fire gun to get on it, you have to meet the requirement of micro stamping. And so currently, there's no technology for it because it's not even as easy as putting a little stamp engraving on the firing pin. They want it 2 locations on the casing. So you're just going to have to add all this crazy mechanical stuff in there. That's just more possibility to break. And to me, that just doesn't seem as safe. So it's just a weird oxymoron of the safe list of handguns that Californians can own.
That's I'm speechless. When we were talking before about setting this up, I was like, I think this will be fun, but I hate to use the word fun because there's really nothing fun about this. John, moving to you, I mean, what have you seen as far as friends coming to you, asking questions? What should they get? What has been the biggest stumbling block? Has it been the idea that they have to wait all this time and that there's so much red tape, or is it more it's just a whole new world to even own a firearm? What has been kind of the biggest thing for you?
Definitely the latter. I think that there's a little bit of that system shock of, I have to wait, or, there's DROs, and then you need to do DROs to also purchase ammo in California now as well. So there's a little bit of getting used to that, but I would say far and away, the larger but sillier problem is if you took that period where you were getting into firearms and maybe you were trying to consume all of these different opinions and gather a sense of what your own leanings might be about any specific topic, that gun's kind of cool, maybe that would be something I'd want to check out in the future. Whatever time scale that happened on, imagine condensing that down to 2 or 3 weeks. So I have all of these friends that are, they are trying to legitimately hop in and are just kind of struggling to digest this massive amount of information. And obviously it's it's what we do for a living. So I'm like, hey, check out this article on my work website. But they'll kind of skim it, and I'll usually get more questions back than, led us to that point to begin with. So there's definitely been, I would say the acceleration of the window of consumption for that information has definitely sped up. And it leads to, I think, a lot of maybe a little bit more misunderstandings, because there is that background level of panic where people, feel like they need to grab onto this info and consume it now, basically. Right. So,
well, and to piggyback on that, you guys, I mean, really everybody dealt with, but the LA area, especially, just the flip-flopping of gun stores being open and closed and open and closed. So you have these people that I'm assuming are coming to you for advice. They collect the advice, they're ready to go buy, and then it's we're closed, we're open, we're closed. So could you kind of maybe walk us through a 10,000 foot view timeline of what that was like, in LA, and then maybe some of the after effects that you're feeling from it?
Eric, did you have more detailed specifics on the gun store stuff?
Honestly, I think it just flip flop, like
Yeah.
the back of this episode where he's like snip, snap, snip, snap, and like we had to double check, like, okay, are they even open right now? And I think they are. There were a bunch of lawsuits filed against them, so they are open. And there was a pretty cool, I think, by some legal entity that was saying, okay, you can do drive-through pickups and things like that. So I don't know if the ones around us do that, but they are now allowed for gun stores.
That apparently that ruling came from the ATF themselves.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Whether California is going to allow that or not, I don't understand how that would work.
Yeah. I mean, every industry is obviously dealing with the new normal, or at least the prolonged, vacation away from normal. We even had to, put a banner on our website, just letting people know, hey, we are open, we are still making things. Now, obviously, supply chain is a little weird right now because, if you're ordering in parts or all that kind of thing. I mean, even if you go on like Brownell's website, they're out of stock, percentage is way higher, than it normally was. So that's definitely been really interesting for sure. But so maybe we can touch on that a little bit too. I mean, just not even from you guys personally, but what have you seen? What have you read? What have you heard about just the supply and demand deficit that we're dealing with right now?
Yeah. I reached out to manufacturers pretty much after the craziness started, and they're just saying everything was flying off the shelves. Shipping times just a lot longer. And with guns flying off the shelves and a lot of first timers getting into it, there's obviously that ammo shortage. And so you would see a lot of like hate for retailers online that raise their prices. And obviously a lot of it is warranted, but we weren't seeing like crazy prices, except for I think cheaper than dirt. So they had some, we grabbed some screenshots for that. But otherwise, I mean, it's really hard as the retailer as well. Like I can definitely see their shoes, like their costs went up a little bit. And it's like, do they want to sell out everything they have in like 14 minutes, like your masks? Or do they want to raise the price a little bit to the point where if someone really wants it, they can still get it. They don't have to get into that like 30-minute window. And so it is pretty difficult. Like every time we're like really searching hard, far and deep for like deals to post up, because there really are no deals. We're just finding like the new normal of prices, especially for very popular calibers like 9 and 5.56. So just everything's gone.
Yeah. I mean, what do you guys think, especially, in a socioeconomic climate like you live in? I mean, do you think there's promise here of potentially petitioning and changing or modifying, the gun laws that you guys have to live under? Or do you think that the memory is just going to be so short and it's going to be, back to business as usual once the state of emergency is lifted? And we've already seen the memes going around too, people reselling and the guns that they bought during the pandemic. Do you think that there's going to be an open road for conversation on this?
What I hope is now that there's this massive influx of beginners, hopefully like younger beginners as well, like we as a community of, I don't know, more veteran gun shooters, we can like welcome them in. As soon as this quarantine's lifted, I'm definitely taking some of my friends who never shot before and got their first gun to the range so we can walk through everything. So I hope like a lot of you guys out there do that too for your newbie friends, like welcome them into the community, because they're our future. More people on the ground that love guns, sort of know what hoops they had to jump through, can hopefully like alter some of the laws in the future.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about rifles and things. So how does that, what are kind of this, outside of pandemic stuff, kind of, what are the stipulations that maybe the rest of the country doesn't necessarily have to deal with that you guys have to deal with when it comes to rifles and their features?
Okay. I think the first thing off top people's heads is when they see those goofy grips, especially like on our channel, like we just get ready for that influx, or on other channels, they're like, what is that? Take that stuff off, like move out of California. But basically when you see that goofy grip, which doesn't let you get your whole like hand around the grip, like they're like fins or modified sort of things like that. That's to create a featureless rifle, because there are some like scary features that California, I believe New York doesn't let you have if you want to maintain access to your magazine, like dropping loose easily. So we'll go back to the evil features. So I had to write this down. So they are a thumb hole stock, a folding or telescoping stock, a flash hider, grenade or flare launcher, extra scary, and a forward pistol grip. So if you want those features, then you have to mag lock your gun. But if you choose to go featureless on those, then you can have ready access to your magazine catch. And so you see those goofy fin grips, those get rid of the pistol grip. Then you can't have flash hiders because that makes you invisible at night, apparently.
Because it's a scary word.
Yeah. And then you see just like pinned stocks. And so essentially that makes your gun featureless. And then you have access to your magazine and your regular capacity mags if you had those legally like before. But otherwise, if you want your gun to look cool, then you have to go with the mag locked function, which is, and I'm trying to remember exactly, but there was a different time where at different generations, but currently it has to be, so if you're a center fire rifle and you want to mag lock it, then you have to open up the action. And so that is always open up to interpretation, but at least for the AR platform, what people are saying is that you have to crack open the upper and lower receiver. And so at least with this, you get to see all the ingenuity of people pop out. There's been tons of devices that help you open up that rear pin and then crack open the upper and lower halves and then get you access to the magazine drop again. So we've seen a lot of cool, crazy inventions out there. But I mean, it's what we do to follow the law in California.
Jeez.
It's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what about like barrels? I mean, you mentioned flash hiders. Are you guys allowed to have threaded barrels at all, or does it all have to be pin and weld, or like we're doing integral
Yeah,
barrels?
threaded barrels are actually okay for us. So we have that. So if you go the mag locked route, you can, I mean, it obviously has to be 16 inches total. So you can do like the 14.5, 14.7s and then pin weld on whatever device you want. But again, yeah, if you go with a featureless, it cannot be a flash hider. And so there's no real definition of that either. So it's just like if the manufacturer like advertises it with any flash hiding capabilities, then it's a no-go.
Yeah. So if you were to have a threaded barrel, it would have to be 16 inches total threaded, and then, the 1.5 or whatever comes on for the threaded muzzle device. So obviously we came out with our integral barrels late last year to kind of help some people with that. That was a question that we got a lot. We still kind of continue to get, even with FAQ pages and blog posts about it and everything. It's like, the people who maybe don't live in an area where it's that strict, they go, well, why would you want that? Now, we found that it helps with people who are doing lightweights. They like it. Some people who do different types of competition shooting, where they have to be able to fit between different posts and all that kind of stuff. So there've been these little like nuanced things that it's kind of found a home in. But a lot of it for us was getting to 16 inches total, which includes that integral muzzle device to keep in mind. There's some states, some jurisdictions that don't even allow threaded. There's been stories I've heard just from people around the office, where people get a little sketchy with their pin and weld because if they try to clean it up, and try to get rid of that weld spot just aesthetically, then now you can't prove, that it's pinned and welded. And it gets really touchy. So really the better weld job you do, the more aesthetically anyway, the more that you kind of fall into these kind of gray areas in the ATF guidelines for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I got like one upper from you guys with that integral sort of muzzle brake, and so far it's so great. And also one of the Bantam 9mm PCCs. So that one I'm waiting for the range to open up so I can finally go test it.
Yeah. So I'm assuming that AR-15 style and AR-9 style, since you brought up the Bantam, they're all going to have, regardless of caliber, they're all going to have those same types of rules, right? So as far as like the mag lock versus featureless and things like that, are there any exceptions when the caliber changes? I mean,
I believe you're okay with rimfire.
Okay.
And then like 2 magazines, like lever action, that sort of stuff. I think you're okay.
Gotcha.
The exciting
Don't quote
things.
me on that. If it's cool, it's going to be locked up.
Yeah.
So somebody needs to make a 5.56 rimfire.
There you go.
So what then are kind of the more popular things that you guys see, you know, when outside of the pandemic, when people are getting into firearms in California and LA proper, you know, what are they typically buying? Are they buying that secondary inflated market stuff that, you know, cops are hacking? Or are they more just going featureless? Or are they going maglock? How, you know, what is normally the most popular thing that you would see in California?
Mm-hmm. I'd say probably just like what they see in the local gun shops. And thankfully there's a couple of good ones around the area that they have like mag-locked options. And also they have like featureless options. And there's like a couple manufacturers out there that also cater towards like the mag-locked, where it doesn't look goofy. There's nothing like inherently different from it. So at least your gun looks cool, because that's really important. But yeah, basically it's just whatever the gun stores have. I think it's easiest, because it's also very difficult to buy something online, have it go to your local FFL and then get it, because they always inflate the price.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
like it doesn't make sense.
So do you guys do like the 80%er thing? I mean, how have you, you know, what are some
the 80%er is like a whole nother can of worms. That can probably be one episode itself. But basically that thing is closed off in that you have to apply for a serial number before you build it now. There's sort of brief period where if you built it already, you can put on your own serial and then sort of deal with that. But as of now, I think it's, you got to tell some alpha boy up there what your serial is. And I think for handguns, it's become almost impossible as well, because there is a sort of like, you need 1.5 ounces of steel or something like that in there, which like polymer, at least lowers, just can't do.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Lots of
yeah, like
you guys are making me feel super fortunate.
Yeah. So I guess I have a question. So, and I guess, you know, I'm sure that if we haven't by now, we're going to hear the comments anyway, but it's a valid question, you know, like, you know, at some point, shall not be infringed. Okay, fine, great. But also, I mean, it is like, you know, just from being on the outside listening in, I'm like, man, that is a lot, right? Mm-hmm. And then, of course, I'm sure you guys get the question like every 4.5 seconds. Why don't you just move out?
Right. All right, this is John for sure.
Yeah. So it's like, where do we even start with that one?
Yeah.
First of all, like the concept of just absolutely picking up your life and taking it elsewhere is not quite as easy as comments on the internet have, you know, would lead you to believe. But like for me, it's like there are like, yeah, our gun laws are absolutely draconian and super obnoxious to deal with. But like there's a lot of really cool things about the state and LA specifically that, at least for me, it's like I wish that I didn't have to deal with all of this nonsense, but it doesn't outweigh the things that I like about Los Angeles, like the people, the food, the culture, the music. I myself am pretty involved in like the local music scene. And so, you know, it's easy to just ham fist smash salty comments into a YouTube comment section, but it doesn't really do the reality of the situation justice, where it's like, I don't know, man, it's my life. And I'm, you know, it's a lot more intertwined with everything else going on in the community than I think people realize. So perhaps someday I too shall become a Californian that flees to the Pacific Northwest and then hated by the communities there.
Yeah.
But until that day comes, I'm pretty comfortable staying where I am.
And I don't want to sound like too like storybook or after school special about it, but you need advocates in these places. You know what I mean? If every gun owner and every gun ownership activist or 2A activist decided to just up and leave California or whatever other state or city might be really, you know, turn-gating the process, now you've lost a big stronghold of advocacy. And the people who are trying to show what I think the pandemic has started to show people is, hey, there is a need. Like this isn't as far-fetched as you're making it sound. You know, it's like, oh, well, do you really think it'll be like Nazi Germany or whatever like that? Like, no, maybe not to that extreme, but you can definitely see where people are getting nervous because local police departments have started changing how they operate. There's people being let out of jail early. There's been, places where they've said down to the local level, okay, here's what this specific sheriff's office is doing to change how many people are on patrol, what calls they're going to respond to in person, kind of what are going to be the tiers to them responding to those calls. I think it has, outside of just even the sudden scare of a state of emergency, has shown people that it really doesn't take all too many strokes of a pen to make you feel like, gosh, I do really need to be able to protect myself or my family or my household.
No, I completely agree with that. And I think one of the sort of springboards for talking to a lot of my friends who are now finding themselves in that position where they are starting to come around on some of these things is like, I don't look like a crazy gun person to most people.
Right.
And usually acquaintances that don't know me super well are a little bit surprised when they find that out. So it's this combination of, I don't know. I think I agree. If everyone just up and leaves the state, then there's no one left to advocate. And hopefully, we'll see where the winds take us because the future certainly feels incredibly uncertain right now.
Yeah.
But hopefully, we do have maybe a little bit broader of a coalition than we went into this with people now, hopefully coming to that understanding that at the end of the day, the state and society is great, but ultimately it's you that is responsible for, you or your family or your friends' protection. So, fingers crossed.
Yeah. Well, and then I don't want to get too personal, but like you mentioned, you're in the music scene, and I think my green screen stuff went away and showed my keyboard over here. But, I did some work, in studios and as a gigging musician, and then both of you guys just living in a city and state that is generally more, gun control leaning. How have you navigated that in the past in your scenes? Like when people are like, oh gosh, I didn't know you were a gun owner. Because that was our first podcast episode, talking about the I don't want to say biases, but just the assumptions and the stereotypes that come with gun ownership, that it's everybody in tactical gear and camo all the time, with a mixed gold dip, kind of how have you guys massaged that, especially as pewpew's grown? How do you reach that topic with your friends and family?
I usually will wait until I've developed, a little bit of rapport with whoever it is that I'm talking to until I drop that on them. Specifically around the office, my dating life is a little bit of a meme, and that I generally tell women up front, it's like, oh, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, well, I work for an outdoor gear review blog. And that usually satisfies, it's like, it's not a lie, but we're not jumping right into it. So I really do think it's about developing a little bit of a personal relationship with whoever it is. They don't necessarily need to know right off the bat. But once they kind of have a handle for who you are and what you're about, and maybe some of your personal ethics, if you want to get into that far, and then you can drop that on them, and it's a little bit less jarring because you're already shattering probably a lot of presupposed notions that they built up in their head over what a typical gun owner looks like. So it's definitely about establishing personal relationships first.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing, I don't know if we hit it yet or not, but one of the things that you guys mentioned on your rundown was just up-to-date mask/outside rules. You want to go into that a little bit, or do you think we hit?
Yeah, it's LA. There's been this really weird kind of situation where it's the Bay Area in California started to be the first affected by the outbreak, and they kind of shuttered a lot of stuff. Los Angeles County itself then announced their own measures. Then the governor announced statewide measures, and it's been a little bit weird figuring out who supersedes who. And I believe there's been some situations where the governor has given jurisdiction to counties to decide, but in general, obviously the state is going to overrule any lesser measures coming down on the county level. But I believe right now, at least for where we are, it is required to have some sort of face protection if you're going outside. Obviously, they're discouraging like N95 and like actual legit PPE because healthcare workers need those. So it's pretty much like fabric covering, cloth, some sort of bandana. But for our city in particular, we're actually a little bit just outside of LA proper, but still LA County, I believe are now requiring face protection for like all employees that are still operating in essential businesses and customers too. So it's been interesting because I don't think that California or the US at large has ever really had anything quite like that. And, I think flu masks are generally not a big deal in other parts of the world, but asking Americans to, it feels like a lot of people are struggling with that. So, yeah, it's been interesting to adjust to this new normal, if you want to call it that.
I think the weirdest thing is that I haven't had to go into a bank. But I was like, wait a minute, wasn't like 5 minutes ago? You didn't want to have your face covered at all if you didn't want steel rails to fall. Like that. That feels a little odd to me. But yeah, the mask thing is different for sure.
I was the last grocery run I did 2 weeks ago, something like that. I was out and I just had a bandana over my face, looked super thugged up, which I enjoy. But I'm in the checkout line, and there is a woman and her daughter behind me who are both also wearing masks. But they were like getting real into my personal space in order to like access the little soda refrigerator in the checkout line. And I just politely turned to them and said, "Hey, I'm sorry, but would you mind backing up and just keeping a little bit of distance?" And the woman like scoffed at me and made some rude remark. I don't remember what it was off the top of my head, but that was really strange to me because it's like you're taking this seriously enough to be wearing PPE into a grocery store, but like the social distancing is the part that you're having trouble with here. Yeah. So it's been real strange, and I'm thankful that I haven't had to venture out into the dark zone too much. But I
think the weirdest thing, I mean, if we can take some grain of humor with what's going on. At least for me, that makes it seem less scary. You know what I mean? That's like, I love stand-up comedy. I love sketch comedy. And so to me, it's like, okay, this isn't going to own me if I could laugh at it a little bit. If I could laugh at the irony, or I could laugh at, just kind of the satire that's there.
The absurdity of the entire thing. Yeah.
I mean, the one thing that got me was I had this, we've been getting stuff delivered grocery wise for us for the last couple of weeks, but a couple of weeks ago I did have to venture into a Walmart, and there were people that I'm pretty sure they like coordinated their outfit with their mask. And I was like, hey, like, all right, you're owning it. You do that looks great and good job. They reminded me of like the early 2000s when Nelly used to wear a Band-Aid under his eye. Yeah, it was very much like that. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate having you on. Super enlightening. Again, anybody watching or listening, we're not lawyers, but we've at least given you something to look into if you want more info on it. And if you guys would, if you want to just plug real quick anything that you guys have as far as some of those articles and things and gun safety stuff on pewpew, where can they find you? Where can they access that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, basically just pewpewtactical.com. Same thing for YouTube, for Instagram. You'll see John up there. So anything pewpew. So great.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys again for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
We want to extend our deepest gratitude to military, police, first responders, and more by saying thank you with special pricing and discounts on all Faxon products. Here's how you get started. First, you'll head on over to our website, faxonfirearms.com. From there, you'll want to click Support and Guardian Purchase Program in the drop-down. Then you'll see the instructions on how to get started, so let's just walk through those. First, you'll want to register for an account on our website. If you've already bought something from us on our website before, then this part's already taken care of. Second, you'll want to send a copy of your credentials or some reasonable verification of affiliation to customer service at faxonfirearms.com. We get a lot of emails where people are like, hey, will this count? Will this ID count? Will this VA card count? Chances are, yes, a lot of them will count, but make sure you attach an image or a copy of that verification to the email before you even ask customer service. That way they can expedite the process for you. As soon as the account has been created or updated, we will send you an email letting you know that you're ready to go. The discount will be available anytime online when you go to your shopping cart. If you have any more questions, please email customer service@faxonfirearms.com.